In the small town of Crestwood, British Columbia, on September 8, 2024, Priya Sharma stood behind the counter of her family's convenience store, the Crestwood Market, restocking cigarette packs on the shelf. The store was a modest brick building on Main Street, its windows plastered with faded soda ads and a neon open sign that flickered after dark. Priya, 32, had run the store with her husband Vikram for 6 years, ever since they'd moved from Surrey to this town of 5,000, chasing a quieter life for their 2 kids, Annika, 10, and Rohan, 7. Crestwood was all rolling hills, logging trucks, and friendly waves, at least on the surface. But for the Sharmas, South Asian immigrants who'd come to Canada from Punjab in 2005, the welcome had always come with shadows. The store was quiet that afternoon, the hum of the fridge competing with a country song on the radio. Priya adjusted her dupatta, its soft green fabric a contrast to the store's utilitarian gray. She was used to slow days, the kind where regulars like old Mr. Thompson would shuffle in for milk or teens would grab energy drinks after school. But today, her mind was elsewhere. Last night, Annika had come home from school upset, saying a classmate, Liam Carter, had called her curry girl during a recess. It wasn't the first time. Annika had mentioned kids mimicking her accent or asking why her lunch smelled weird. Priya had hugged her, told her to ignore it, but the words stuck like a splinter. She'd moved here to give her kids a better life. Not this. The bell above the door jingled, snapping Priya out of her thoughts. A man in his 40s, broad-shouldered with a flannel shirt and a Blue Jays cap, walked in. She recognized him, Dave Mitchell, a logger who came in weekly for beer and lottery tickets. He nodded at her, but his eyes didn't meet hers, a habit she'd noticed in some customers. "Pack of players, Blue," he said, tossing a $10 bill on the counter. Priya grabbed the cigarettes, rang them up, and slid his change back. "Anything else?" she asked, her voice polite but clipped. She'd learned to keep interactions short with guys like Dave, who always seemed to carry an edge. "Nah," he said, pocketing the pack. Then as he turned to leave, he muttered, "Place smells like a spice rack." The words were low, almost casual, but they hit Priya like a slap. She froze, her hand still on the register. Dave didn't look back, just pushed the door open and stepped into the sunlight. Priya's face burned. She wanted to call after him, to demand an apology, but the words caught in her throat. She thought of Vikram, who'd tell her to let it go, that customers like Dave weren't worth the fight. She thought of Annika, who'd face worse if Priya didn't teach her to stand up. But standing up in Crestwood wasn't simple. The Sharmas were one of a handful of non-white families in town, and the store was their lifeline. Rocking the boat could cost them more than pride. She busied herself with inventory, trying to shake the comment, but it lingered, joining a chorus of slights she'd collected over the years. The neighbor who'd asked if they were legal, the parent at Rohan's soccer game who joked about outsourcing when Vikram volunteered to coach, the customer who'd told Priya she spoke good English for an immigrant, as if her master's degree in business from Simon Fraser University was a surprise. Each was small, a pebble in her shoe, but together they were a weight she carried daily. That evening, Priya told Vikram about Dave as they closed the store. Vikram, 35, with his neatly trimmed beard and tired eyes, was wiping down the counter. "He's an idiot," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Don't let him get to you. We've got enough to deal with." He gestured at a stack of bills on the back counter. Hydro, rent, inventory costs. The store was surviving, but barely, and Crestwood's economy was tight. Logging was down, and people were spending less. "It's not just him," Priya said, her voice low so the kids, doing homework in the back room, wouldn't hear. "It's Annika's school. It's the looks we get. I thought it'd be different here." She paused, her eyes stinging. "I'm tired, Vic. Tired of pretending it's okay." Vikram stopped wiping and looked at her. "I know, but what do? Call him out? He'll tell his buddies and they'll stop coming. We need this place." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Let's talk to Annika's teacher first. Start small." Priya nodded, but small felt like surrender. She wanted more, for her kids, for herself, for the life they'd dreamed of when they left Surrey's hustle for Crestwood's promise. On September 10th, Priya met with Annika's teacher, Miss Harper, a kind but frazzled woman in her 50s. The classroom smelled of chalk and glue, with construction paper art taped to the walls. Priya explained the curry girl incident, her voice steady but her hands twisting in her lap. "Annika's been quiet lately," she said. "She's not herself. I think it's the teasing." Miss Harper frowned, her pen tapping her notebook. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sharma. Kids can be thoughtless. Liam's a good boy, but I'll talk to him and his parents. We have a bullying policy. She hesitated, then added, it might help if Annika blends in a bit more. Maybe pack a different lunch. Something less noticeable? Priya's jaw tightened. Her lunch is what we eat at home. It's who we are. She wanted to say more, to ask why Annika had to change when Liam was the problem, but Miss Harper's apologetic smile stopped her. This wasn't a fight she'd win here. That night, Annika overheard Priya telling Vikram about the meeting. I don't want to eat sandwiches, Annika said, her voice small but fierce. I like dal. Why do I have to be different? Priya hugged her heart breaking. You don't, Beta. You're perfect. But as she tucked Annika into bed, Priya felt the weight of her own words. Being perfect wasn't enough in Crestwood. The next day, September 11th, trouble came to the store. Priya was alone. Vikram at a supplier meeting in Kamloops. Around noon, a group of teens, 4 boys, maybe 15 or 16, walked in, their laughter loud and sharp. She recognized one as Liam Carter, Annika's classmate, his blonde hair sticking out under a backward cap. They grabbed chips and sodas, tossing them onto the counter with exaggerated carelessness. Liam leaned forward, smirking. Heard you snitched to Miss Harper, he said, loud enough for his friends to hear. My mom says you're making a big deal out of nothing. Priya's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice calm. I'm not here to argue, Liam. That'll be $12.50. She bagged their items, her eyes never leaving his. Liam's smirk faded, replaced by something colder. You think you're so smart, huh? Running this place like you own Crestwood. He grabbed the bag, but as he turned to leave, he knocked a display of gum off the counter, the packs scattering across the floor. His friends laughed, and one muttered, "Packy shop," as they sauntered out. Priya stood frozen, her hands gripping the counter. The slur wasn't new, she'd heard it before, in Surrey and Vancouver, even here. But coming from a kid, Annika's classmate, it cut deeper. She knelt to pick up the gum, her hands shaking. She thought of calling Vikram, but he was hours away. She thought of calling the police, but what would they do? Tell her it was just kids being kids? She cleaned up alone, the store's silence louder than ever. When Vikram returned that evening, Priya told him everything. His face darkened, his usual calm cracking. That's it, he said. We're not letting this slide. Liam's parents, the school, someone's answering for this. Priya nodded, but fear gnawed at her. Crestwood was small, its families tight-knit. The Carters were locals, their name on plaques at the community center. The Sharmas were outsiders, their store a target. On September 12th, Vikram called Liam's mother, Karen Carter, a realtor with a reputation for sharp elbows. The call was brief. My son's not a bully, Karen snapped, her voice icy through the speakerphone. You're blowing this out of proportion. Maybe teach your daughter to fit in. She hung up before Vikram could respond. The next day, a Friday, the store felt different. Regulars like Mr. Thompson didn't come in. A woman Priya knew from the PTA crossed the street when she saw her outside. By evening, a crude note was slipped under the door. Go back to India. The words were scribbled in black ink, the paper torn from a notebook. Priya's hands trembled as she showed it to Vikram. This is about Liam, she said, Karen spreading the word. Vikram's jaw clenched. We're not running, this is our home. He took a photo of the note and emailed Miss Harper, the school principal, and the local RCMP detachment, demanding action. But Priya saw the worry in his eyes. The store was their lifeline, and Crestwood was turning against them. On September 14th, 2024, Priya Sharma woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windows of their small house on Cedar Lane, a few blocks from the Crestwood market. The note, Go back to India, was still on the kitchen table, sealed in a plastic bag for the police, its black ink a stain on her mind. She hadn't slept well, her dreams haunted by Liam Carter's smirk in the empty store yesterday. Vikram was already up making coffee, his phone buzzing with unread emails. The principal replied, he said, his voice low to avoid waking Annika and Rohan. Meeting Monday, the RCMP too. Priya nodded, her stomach tight. She wanted to believe the school and police would help, but Crestwood's silence was louder than any promise. The store had been eerily quiet since the incident with Liam and the note, with fewer customers each day. Mrs. Delaney, who'd bought her lotto tickets every Friday for years, hadn't shown up. Even kids who usually grabbed snacks after school were staying away. Priya felt the town's judgment like a cold wind, chilling her family's place in Crestwood. The weekend was tense. On September 15th, Priya and Vikram took the kids to the park, hoping to escape the weight of the store. Annika and Rohan ran to the swings, their laughter a brief balm, but Priya noticed other parents watching them. A woman she recognized from the PTA, Cheryl Baxter, pulled her son away when Rohan tried to join a game of tag. "Come on, sweetie," Cheryl said, her voice sharp, steering the boy toward the slide. Priya's chest tightened. She wanted to confront her, to ask why her son wasn't good enough, but Vikram's hand on her arm stopped her. "Not here," he whispered. "Not in front of the kids." That night, Annika asked why no one at the park played with her. "Is it because of Liam?" she said, her voice small. Priya's heart broke. "It's not you, Beta," she said, hugging her. "Some people, they're just scared of what's different." But the words felt hollow. Annika wasn't the problem, but she was the one paying the price. On September 16th, Priya and Vikram met with Principal Margaret Evans at Crestwood Elementary. The school's office smelled of coffee and paper, with a faded welcome banner on the wall. Miss Harper, Annika's teacher, was there too, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Margaret, a stern woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled into a bun, opened the meeting with a practiced smile. "We take these matters seriously," she said, glancing at Priya and Vikram, "but we need to be fair to all parties." Vikram leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Liam called our daughter Curry Girl and harassed Priya at our store. His friends used a slur. We found a note telling us to leave. This isn't just kids being kids, it's targeted." Margaret's smile faltered. "We've spoken to Liam and his mother. He admits to the recess comment but says it was a joke. The store incident, he claims he didn't mean to knock over the display. As for the note, we can't prove it's connected." She paused, her eyes flicking to Miss Harper. "We're addressing bullying with assemblies and counseling for Liam." Priya's anger flared. "Counseling? He's intimidating our daughter, our business. His mother's telling people we're the problem. Customers are avoiding us." She slid a photo of the note across the table. "This is what we're dealing with." Miss Harper shifted uncomfortably. "I've spoken to Liam's class about respect, Mrs. Sharma. But Annika, she could help by not drawing attention. Maybe avoid talking about the incident." Priya's hands clenched. "You're asking my daughter to hide who she is. Why isn't Liam being suspended?" Her voice shook, but she didn't care. This wasn't about fairness. It was about protecting a local kid over hers. Margaret's tone sharpened. "Suspension requires clear evidence of intent. We're handling this within policy. I suggest you focus on supporting Annika at home." The dismissal was clear. Vikram squeezed Priya's hand under the table, signaling it was time to go. Outside, Priya's eyes stung with unshed tears. "They're protecting him," she said, her voice low. "Because he's a Carter, because we're not one of them." Vikram nodded, his jaw tight. "We're not done. The RCMP's next." But Priya saw the strain in his eyes. The store's revenue was down 30% since Friday, and bills were piling up. Fighting was costing them more than they could afford. That afternoon, they met Constable Ryan Patel at the Crestwood RCMP detachment, a small building with peeling paint and a single flagpole. Ryan, a second-generation Indian-Canadian in his 30s, listened as they explained the incidents. Liam's harassment, the slur, the note. He took the note, still in its plastic bag, and promised to investigate. "I get it," he said, his voice quiet. "My family went through this in Kelowna, but I'll be honest, notes like this are hard to trace. No prints, no cameras. Liam's a minor, so any charges would need solid proof." Priya's hope flickered. "What about the store? People are boycotting us. Karen Carter's spreading lies." Ryan sighed. "That's not illegal, but it's wrong. I'll talk to her, see if I can get a read on Liam's friends. If there's a pattern, we might link it to the note." He paused, meeting Priya's gaze. "You're doing the right thing, but small towns, they close ranks. Be careful." The warning stuck with Priya. On September 17th, the store was nearly empty. A delivery driver, one of their few regulars, mentioned hearing Karen Carter at the diner, telling people the Sharmas were stirring trouble and not really Crestwood. By evening, graffiti appeared on the store's back door. "Curry out" in red spray. "Paint." Priya stared at it, her heart pounding as Vikram called Ryan. The constable arrived quickly, taking photos, but his words echoed his earlier caution. "No witnesses, no cameras. We'll patrol more," but he didn't finish. He didn't need to. That night, Priya and Vikram sat the kids down. Annika and Rohan deserved to know why the store was quiet, why their parents were tense. "Some people don't like us because of where we're from," Vikram said, his voice steady. "But this is our home, and we're staying." Annika's eyes welled up. Is it my fault? Because of Liam? Priya pulled her close. No, Beta. It's their fault, not yours. But as she held her daughter, Priya felt the weight of her own fear. She was fighting for Annika's future, but at what cost? On September 18th, a small act of kindness broke the darkness. Sarah Nguyen, a Vietnamese Canadian who ran the town's bakery, stopped by the store with a box of pastries. I heard what's happening, she said, her voice soft. My family got the same crap when we opened. You're not alone. She offered to spread the word among her customers, urging them to support the Sharmas. Priya's throat tightened with gratitude. Thank you, she said, the words heavy with relief. Sarah's visit sparked an idea. Priya suggested hosting a community event at the store, free coffee, snacks, a chance to talk. Show them we're part of Crestwood, she told Vikram. He hesitated, worried about more trouble, but agreed. We've got to try something, he said. They set the date for September 21st, printing flyers with Anika's help. But trouble came first. On September 19th, Priya arrived at the store to find a broken window, glass scattered across the floor. A brick lay among the shards, wrapped in paper with a single word, leave. Vikram's face was stone as he swept up the glass, his silence louder than any curse. Priya called Ryan, who filed another report, but the message was clear. Crestwood shadows were closing in. On September 20th, 2024, Priya Sharma taped a handwritten sign to the Crestwood Market's freshly repaired window, Community Coffee Morning, September 21st, 10 a.m., free drinks and snacks. All welcome. The glass, replaced after the brick shattered it the previous day, gleamed under the morning sun, but Priya's hands trembled as she smoothed the tape. The brick, wrapped with the word leave, was now with the RCMP, along with photos of the curry out graffiti. Constable Ryan Patel had promised to investigate, but his words, no witnesses, no leads, echoed in her mind. Crestwood's silence was deafening, and Priya felt the town's eyes on her family, judging, waiting. Inside the store, Vikram was setting up for the event, stacking paper cups and arranging trays of samosas and cookies. Annika and Rohan helped, their small hands folding flyers, though Annika's eyes were wary. Will people come, Mama? She asked, her voice quiet. Priya forced a smile. Some will, Beta, the good ones. But doubt gnawed at her. The boycott had worsened since the graffiti. Only a handful of customers had come yesterday, and the till was nearly empty. Sarah Nguyen's pastries and kind words had been a lifeline, but one ally wasn't enough to stem the tide. Vikram caught Priya's eye as he plugged in the coffee maker. We're doing this, he said, his voice firm but tired. If they don't show, we'll know who Crestwood really is. Priya nodded, but the weight of the past week, Liam's harassment, Karen Carter's lies, the note, the vandalism, pressed against her chest. She wanted to believe in the town they'd called home for 6 years, but the shadows of welcome were growing darker. By 10 a.m. on September 21st, the store was ready. The air smelled of fresh coffee and cumin, and a small table held snacks and a guest book for comments. Sarah Nguyen arrived early, bringing a tray of croissants, and her teenage son, Ethan, who helped Rohan set up a kids' coloring station. You've got this, Sarah whispered to Priya, squeezing her hand. A few others trickled in. Mr. Thompson, the milk-buying regular, who mumbled an apology for staying away. Amina Khan, a Pakistani nurse who'd moved to Crestwood last year. And Tom Bradley, a retired mechanic who'd always tipped Annika for bagging his groceries. But the store felt empty, the crowd far smaller than Priya had hoped. At 10:30, Priya stepped forward to speak, her voice echoing in the quiet. Thank you for coming, she said, her dupatta catching the light. We opened this store to be part of Crestwood, to serve you. But lately we've faced things, words, actions that say we don't belong. We're here to say we do. This is our home, and we want to share it with you. Her words were steady, but her eyes scanned the faces, searching for warmth. Sarah clapped, and a few others joined, but the applause was thin. Tom raised a hand. You folks are good people, he said, his voice gruff. Don't let the idiots win. Priya smiled, grateful, but noticed Amina glancing nervously at the door, as if expecting trouble. Trouble came at 11. A group of 5 adults, 3 men and 2 women, walked in, led by Karen Carter. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her realtor's smile sharp as a blade. Priya's stomach dropped. Karen hadn't been in the store since Liam's incident, but her influence was everywhere. In the boycott, the graffiti, the brick. The group didn't take coffee or snacks, just stood near the counter, their presence a challenge. Karen spoke first, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Nice little event, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But let's be honest, you're stirring up trouble, accusing our kids, our town. Maybe if you didn't make everything about race, people would shop here." The store went silent. Vikram stepped forward, his face hard. "We didn't start this, Karen. Your son did, calling our daughter names, trashing our store. You're the one spreading lies." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Lies? My Liam's a good kid. You're the ones causing problems, acting like victims. This is Crestwood, not your country." The word "your" hung in the air, heavy with meaning. One of her group, a burly man in a camo jacket, muttered, "Should have stayed in Surrey." Priya's anger surged, drowning her fear. "This is our country," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "We're Canadian. Our kids were born here. You don't get to decide who belongs." Annika, standing behind the counter, gripped Rohan's hand, her eyes wide. Sarah stepped between them, her voice sharp. "Karen, take your friends and go. This is their store, their home. You're not welcome here." The words were a spark, and the room crackled with tension. Tom and Amina moved closer to the Sharmas, a quiet show of support, but Karen's group didn't budge. The camo jacket man sneered. "Home, this place is a dump. No wonder nobody comes." He kicked a chair, sending it skidding across the floor. Ethan, Sarah's son, flinched, and Rohan let out a small cry. Priya's heart pounded. She wanted to protect her kids, to end this, but her feet felt rooted. Vikram pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the RCMP," he said, his voice steady. "You're trespassing." Karen laughed, a cold, brittle sound, but the group backed toward the door. "You'll regret this," she said, her eyes locked on Priya. "Crestwood doesn't need you." They left, the bell jingling mockingly behind them. The remaining guests were shaken. Mr. Thompson helped right the chair, muttering about "damn fools." Amina hugged Priya, her voice low. "I've seen this before. They'll keep pushing unless you push back." Sarah stayed until the end, helping clean up, but the event was over. Only a dozen people had come, and the guest book had 3 signatures. That night, Priya and Vikram sat in their living room, the kids asleep upstairs. The store's revenue was down 50% from last month, and the vandalism had cost $1,200 to fix. Vikram's email to the RCMP with a video from the store's security camera showing Karen's group was unanswered. "We can't keep doing this," Priya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The kids are scared. We're losing everything." Vikram took her hand, his grip firm. "We're not losing. They want us to run. We stay, we fight." But his eyes betrayed his doubt. Crestwood was their home, but it was also a battleground, and the cost was rising. On September 22nd, a small victory came. Ryan Patel called to say the RCMP had identified the camo jacket man, Greg Walsh, a friend of Karen's husband, from the security footage. He'd been issued a warning for disturbing the peace, but no charges were filed. "It's something," Ryan said. "We're watching Karen's crew. Keep your cameras on." Priya thanked him, but the win felt hollow. A warning wouldn't stop the boycott or the hate. That day, Annika came home with a drawing from school, a family under a rainbow labeled Us. "It's for you, Mama," she said, her smile tentative. Priya's eyes welled up. Annika was fighting too, in her own way. Priya taped the drawing to the store's counter, a reminder of why they couldn't give up. A brick lay among the shards, wrapped in paper with a single word: leave. Vikram's face was stone as he swept up the glass, his silence louder than any curse. She wasn't just scared, she was angry. Angry at Karen, at Liam, at Crestwood's silence. She grabbed a can of paint from the store's stock and started covering the words, her strokes fierce. Vikram joined her, and soon Annika and Rohan were there, holding brushes, painting over the hate. A passerby, an older woman named Linda Murray, stopped to watch. "You're strong," she said, her voice soft. "I'm sorry this is happening." She offered to bring friends to the store, to spread the word. Priya nodded, too tired to smile, but the gesture stayed with her. Maybe Crestwood wasn't all shadows, but as they painted, Priya saw Karen's car slow down across the street, her face visible through the window. The look in her eyes wasn't anger, it was triumph. Priya's resolve hardened. This wasn't over. On September 24th, 2024, Priya Sharma stood in the Crestwood market staring at the freshly painted wall where "Go Home" had been scrawled the previous day. The red paint was gone, covered by a layer of gray, but the words lingered in her mind, a taunt that Crestwood didn't want her family. The store was quiet, the till holding just $47 from the morning's sales. Vikram was in the back, on the phone with their insurance agent about the broken window, his voice strained. Annika and Rohan were at school, their backpacks heavier with the knowledge that their home was under siege. Priya's hands gripped the counter, her nails digging into the wood. She was tired of the boycott, the vandalism, the silence, but her anger burned brighter, fueled by Karen Carter's triumphant stare from her car yesterday. The bell jingled, and Linda Murray, the older woman who'd stopped by during the painting, walked in with two friends, both white women in their 60s. "We're here to support you," Linda said, placing a $20 bill on the counter for a loaf of bread and a soda. "I told my book club what's happening. They're coming tomorrow." Her friends nodded, one adding, "It's not right what Karen's doing. We're with you." Priya's throat tightened. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. The gesture was small, but it felt like a crack in Crestwood's wall of indifference. But the crack was fragile. That afternoon, Constable Ryan Patel visited with an update. The RCMP had interviewed Greg Walsh, the camo jacket man from the community event, and linked him to the latest graffiti through a partial fingerprint on the spray can, found in a dumpster nearby. "He's denying it," Ryan said, standing in the store's cramped office. "But we're charging him with vandalism. Karen's not talking, but we know she's rallying people. The boycott's her doing." He paused, his eyes meeting Priya's. "I'm pushing for more patrols, but you need to be careful. This might get worse before it gets better." Vikram, who'd joined them, clenched his fists. "Worse? Our windows smashed, our walls tagged, our kids are scared. How much worse can it get?" His voice cracked, the strain of weeks showing. Priya touched his arm, grounding him, but her own fear mirrored his. The store was bleeding money, and the kids were withdrawing. Annika barely spoke, and Rohan had nightmares about bad people. Ryan sighed. "I'm doing what I can. We're looking into the brick, the note, all of it. If you get more threats, call me directly." He handed Priya his card, his expression heavy. As he left, Priya felt the weight of his words. The RCMP could charge Greg, but Karen's influence was untouchable, a shadow cast by Crestwood's tight-knit roots. On September 25th, the tension snapped. Priya was alone in the store, Vikram at the kids' school for a parent-teacher meeting about Annika's recent silence. Around noon, Karen Carter walked in, flanked by two men, one Greg Walsh, the other a wiry guy with a shaved head Priya recognized as Karen's cousin, Mike. The air thickened, the store's hum drowned by the thud of Priya's pulse. Karen's smile was cold, her eyes glinting with purpose. "Thought I'd check on our local troublemakers," she said, her voice loud in the empty store. "Heard business is slow." Priya's hands shook, but she stood tall behind the counter. "Get out, Karen. You're not welcome here." Her voice was steady, fueled by weeks of swallowed rage. Karen laughed, stepping closer. "Not welcome? That's rich coming from you. This is my town. You're the ones who don't fit." Greg smirked, leaning against a shelf while Mike crossed his arms, blocking the door. Priya's eyes darted to the security camera, its red light blinking. She hoped it was recording. "You're bullying our kids, ruining our business," Priya said, her voice rising. "You sent that note, the brick. I know it's you." She didn't have proof, but Karen's flinch told her she'd hit close. Karen's smile vanished. "Watch your mouth. You accuse me without evidence. You'll lose more than this dump." She gestured at the store, her voice low and venomous. "Crestwood doesn't want you. Take the hint." Greg kicked a stack of newspapers, scattering them, and Mike laughed, a harsh bark. Priya's fear boiled into defiance. "We're not leaving. This is our home, and we're fighting for it." She grabbed her phone, dialing Ryan's number. "I'm calling the police." "Leave now!" Karen's eyes narrowed, but the sound of Priya's voice, loud, unshaken, shifted something. "You'll regret this," she spat, turning to the door. Greg and Mike followed, but not before Greg knocked over a display of canned goods, the clatter echoing as they left. Priya's legs buckled, and she sank to the floor, her phone still ringing. Ryan answered, and she told him everything, her voice shaking but clear. "They threatened us, Ryan. Karen, Greg, another guy, it's on camera." Ryan promised to come immediately, urging her to lock the door. As she did, Sarah and Guyen arrived, having seen Karen's car from her bakery. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, pulling Priya into a hug. Priya nodded, but tears stung her eyes. She wasn't okay, but she wasn't broken. Ryan arrived with another officer, reviewing the security footage. Karen's threats, Greg's vandalism, Mike's intimidation, it was all there. "This is enough for charges," Ryan said, his voice firm. "Harassment, mischief, maybe more. We're bringing them in." Priya felt a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. That same day, September 26th, the Sharmas received a letter from a lawyer representing Karen Carter, claiming defamation, and demanding a public apology for their accusations. The letter threatened a lawsuit that could bankrupt the store. Vikram's face was grim as he read it aloud to Priya that night. "She's trying to scare us," he said, but his voice held a tremor. The store's revenue was down 60%, and their savings were nearly gone. A lawsuit could finish them. On September 27th, hope flickered. Linda Murray's book club, 10 women, all locals, came to the store buying groceries and spreading word of the Sharma's plight. Amina Khan organized a small fundraiser at the community center, raising $2,000 for repairs. Sarah Nguyen posted about the store on social media, tagging local news. By evening, a reporter from a Kamloops paper called, wanting an interview. Priya hesitated, fearing more backlash, but Vikram nodded. "Tell our story," he said. "Let Crestwood see us." On September 28th, Priya gave the interview, her voice steady as she described the harassment, the vandalism, the boycott. "We're not just fighting for our store," she said. "We're fighting for our kids, for our right to belong." The article ran online the next day, sparking comments, some hateful, but many supportive. #Stand with Sharmas trended locally, and customers trickled back, some apologizing for staying away. On September 30th, the RCMP charged Karen, Greg, and Mike with harassment and vandalism. Karen's lawyer argued she was a victim of overblown accusations, but the security footage was damning. The charges didn't erase the boycott's damage or the legal threat, but they were a crack in Karen's armor. Crestwood's shadows were still there, but light was breaking through. That evening, Priya sat with Annika and Rohan, showing them the article. "People are with us," she said, pointing to supportive comments. Annika's eyes brightened. "Does that mean we can stay?" Priya hugged her, her heart heavy but hopeful. "We're staying, Beta. This is home." But the fight wasn't over. On October 1st, Priya found a new note under the store's door. "You'll pay." The handwriting matched the first, and Ryan added it to the case. The legal battle loomed, and the store's future was uncertain. Yet, as Priya looked at Annika's drawing on the counter, a family under a rainbow, she felt a shift. The weight of Crestwood's hate was crushing, but the Sharma's resilience was stronger. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting for their kids, for their home, for a Crestwood that could be better.